Hello, everybody. Welcome to Your Bread and Butter Podcast. I'm Andrew Boudry.
And I'm Ryan Cummings.
We're going to be talking about Robo Advisors 101, friend, foe, or just a tool.
The goal today, with the ever exploding popularity of Robo Advisors, is to shed some light on what they are, who they're for, and what their uses serve. So stay tuned in today's episode to find out more.
Discussions in this show should not be construed as specific recommendations or investment advice. Always consult with your investment professional before making important investment decisions. Securities offered through Cambridge Investment Research Incorporated, a registered broker-dealer. Member FINRA SIPC. Advisory services through Cambridge Investment Research Advisors Incorporated, a registered investment advisor. Cambridge and Private Financial Design LLC are not affiliated.
Bread and butter.
Welcome back, everybody. We're going to be talking about Robo Advisors today. Not picking a particular one. We've got a lot of stuff to talk about today. So, Ryan, take it away.
Yeah, Robo Advisors, they've really begun to grow over the last 10, 15 years. It was really in the 2010s that kind of a lot of fintech companies, and fintech, for those of you that don't know, it's financial technology companies, kind of started to come out of the woodwork and creating these algorithms, these platforms that can kind of automate investing. It was kind of a wave of increased technology that we've really seen continue to explode, not just in the 2010s, but even all the way into the 2020s and even 2026 as we record this here today.
And this is because really people began to get distrustful of institutions, particularly after the banking crisis in 07, 08, and 09, going into 2010. And so people want simplicity, transparency, and lower fees.
They do. And this also was a big selling point towards the younger investors. I think a lot of younger individuals are really digital first. They're looking for digital first solutions. And this whole fintech, explosion here of these robo-advisors provided just that. It was this modern, kind of frictionless, seamless, easy to create an account, easy to deposit money, easy to start investing. That was kind of how they marketed themselves to the younger generations.
And it's appealing to the younger crowd because, hey, we'll invest for you automatically for a fraction of the cost, which, hey, that's true. They do.
The big question here, though, is they sound attractive on the surface, but you really want to understand, what exactly are you getting? Because while the costs maybe are less, and we'll talk more about that in a few slides, we're looking at what services are you actually paying for when you do get a robo-advisor and you do look kind of under the hood of what they're actually providing.
Yes. I mean, even though there's companies out there that talk about, it's for free. Well, you can't work for free. That's not what fills the corporate bank account as well as the personal bank account. So we do want to look at this definition of what a robo-advisor is.
The simple way to put it, automated investment management using algorithms. So instead of a live human, a live advisor down there picking maybe different stocks or even just picking, different funds or different sectors within the portfolio, it is a computer algorithm designed to analyze the markets to an extent and make adjustments or tweaks or even lack thereof. And actually we'll talk about what I mean by that in a second, and make sure that portfolio is structured in a way that meets the client's needs. Now, that meets the client's needs is also very, maybe high level.
Correct.
Is another thing too, because we're talking primarily when we say meet the client's needs, primarily using what's called a risk tolerance questionnaire.
Right.
So you want to talk a little bit about what that does?
So the risk tolerance questionnaire, you're going to get with the typical financial planner, you're going to get a very thorough, really gritty, all the way down to what your weekly, daily expenses are, and look at it in terms of how much you're saving, all that. In the risk questionnaire that they're asking in most of the robo-advisors, it's a very basic, very simple kind of hey, how much risk do you want to take? And that's a very different equation when it comes to this kind of investing.
And then the goal of that questionnaire is to essentially pair you with one of their models. And one of the models, their algorithm built. So it's kind of this one size fits most sort of matchmaking where maybe they have 5, 8, 10 different models. Depending on where you score out in that risk questionnaire, you're going into one of their 10 or so models that they have built.
Well, I'm going to date myself here because one of the things I used to hate growing up as a kid is I'd go out and I'd buy my white tube socks that I needed for the different sports. And it says, one size fits all. Yeah, right. Okay, from a size 8 to a size 12, it's
right.
The socks don't fit that way. But, if you're going to go for that, one size fits all.
And it's a perfect analogy, though, because while these models, might work okay, kind of like your socks. They might work okay, but they may not be exactly what you're looking for. If you're someone who wants a little more customization, maybe the ability to invest in a few specific companies, or maybe have a little more in one sector or the other, just maybe some research you've done, some affinity you have towards these certain sectors or companies, well, that's completely off the table.
Correct.
With a robo-advisor.
Correct. And here, in fact, one of the things that they do is they do automated rebalancing. So they take your portfolio, and if you've got too much in one sector or more than what you're supposed to have in the model, they just sell it off. And, that's part of what they do. And then there's sometimes tax loss harvesting, where they can help lower some of your taxable gains with some tax loss harvesting, but that's something you have to look into for each of those robo-advisors.
And a lot of the advisors that do offer that extra feature of tax loss harvesting are going to be the more expensive ones.
Correct.
So you pay for what you get.
Pay for what you get.
But the goal here, again, the whole reason people are gravitating towards this kind of one size fits most model is, as we already kind of mentioned, it's convenient. It is usually lower cost, not free, but lower cost than, maybe a traditional advisor or money manager, and just low friction. Easy to just open the account online. You don't even have to talk to anyone. You can open an account 100% digitally, deposit money digitally, without even talking to a real person.
So, I relate this to, and again, dating myself. When bank cards were first introduced in the 1990s, they were called ATM cards. And I came up with a moniker for them called Automatic Troublemaker. People would go in thinking, well, I'll just take money out of my account. And next thing you know, they're bouncing checks left and right as they've drained their account out of the automatic troublemaker, the ATM account. Now we call them debit cards, so we debiting the account. Well, the truth is that is very similar, because digital investing, as well as anything else, is a really slippery slope if you don't really know what your thumbs are doing and where those thumbs are leading you.
Right. And I think it's just with any technology, like the ATM card example you gave, or even these robo-advisors we're talking about today, there's always going to be a learning curve, with any new technology, and making sure that, they're something that is, straightforward, proven, safe as well. That's a big component when we're talking about money and people's investments, and that people know exactly what they're getting into.
Here's the thing, and as we go through some of this, is that if you're out there and you just hate people, you don't like dealing with people, you just don't want to deal with anybody, this is kind of your realm. This is where you are. Most people go into this thing because they don't have to deal with some brokers, I was calling them, or some insurance agent or a planner, even like ourselves. But when somebody comes into our office, we're asking for a lot of information because we want to customize what their financial experience is going to be like, particularly if they have a goal in mind. In this instance, for robo-advising, if you just don't want to be involved with anybody in your life and you just want to do your own thing, this could very well fit the match.
It could. And there's, even in your example of the, kind of the new technology and whatnot, we're kind of moving away from that phase of robo-advisors. And they've been around for a good bit of time now. And you could see here on this page some of the upstarts, some of the ones that kind of really got the robo-advisor movement started back in the early 2010s, where your companies like your Wealthfronts, your Betterments, Personal Capital, these maybe are lesser known companies that, back in, I remember even when I got into the finance space in 2013, like hearing about some of these companies and having some clients that were really questioning them because they aren't your household names. It was a new technology. There was some concern over what exactly are they getting into. But nowadays we're seeing even some of the big institutional companies, your Fidelities, your Vanguards, your Charles Schwabs, that are now also offering robo-advisor platforms or services within their broader scope of services as well. So So there's lots of options out there for robo-advisors these days, lots of choices that are, more well-known, more well-established. Maybe you're, give you a little more of that peace of mind knowing you're not just, throwing your money into this company that, who knows, could fail 6 months from now. It's a little more stability in the space. Doesn't mean you want to just run out and go, open up a robo account either. You want to make sure you're weighing the pros and cons of these robo accounts.
Where robo advisors really shine is lower cost. I mean, they have lower fees than most advisory relationships and typically charge anywhere from 0.2% to 0.5% in management fees. And it's really good for early savers, younger savers, or small balances in that realm, or if you're just trying to get a savings plan in place where it's automatically being done for you. And there's a lot of automation, and automation is another thing here. It's consistent in the implementation of the way you want to invest, and it rebalances the portfolio without any kind of emotions or worrying about what's going on, just using all the algorithms and the technical needs that are for that model portfolio.
It gives you those kind of behavioral guardrails. Like if you're someone who's maybe going to panic when the market fluctuates and or make some changes, or maybe like hold off on investing here and there, like you can kind of set all these automated features to it. So it's really more set it and forget it, out of sight, out of mind, kind of helps you stay the course without overthinking. And then there's all the ease of access, the onboarding, the low minimums, because that can be a barrier to entry for some younger or newer investors to work with a traditional advisor. Not every advisor, but many have minimums in place. And that can be a barrier to entry. So if you're someone who's just looking to get started, as you already mentioned, small balances, newer investors, etc., it could be a decent option. Doesn't mean even if you fit those categories, it is the best option, but it just could be if you meet some of those criteria.
Yeah, and I think, when you mentioned earlier the behavioral guardrails, this is the thing that actually you and I do the most.
Right.
One of our more central roles as advisors, as certified financial planners, we really try hard to keep people from shooting themselves in the foot. So if you really trust yourself, then it can work okay. But if you're one of those people that's very emotional when it comes to your money, and you're just liquidating stuff left and right because you're just worried about the market going down, you may be doing a lot more injury to yourself than not.
Right.
And usually in the broader market, when the market is going up, everybody wants to invest. When in actuality, the time to really invest is when the market's going down. And as Warren Buffett says, go in while everything's on fire, go into the house and grab the most valuable assets you can. But anyway, there are some good things about it, but there are some cons.
There's some things that naturally with a technology like this are going to be lacking. One, we already kind of alluded to it, is that one size fits most model. That might be good for some people. Others may want a little more customization. These algorithms, they can't understand some of that little nuance of, maybe you want to stay out of certain spaces or certain sectors that you have a negative affinity towards or something like that. Maybe there are certain companies or certain stocks you'd love to actually gain more exposure to because you have a positive affinity towards them. Or there's different complexities within your life that, they can't be captured in a simple risk questionnaire that could impact how you may want to actually invest. But really the biggest con with a robo-advisor is there's no real planning. Right? If you're someone who's just looking for investing and investment management, the robo-advisor is going to provide some of that to an extent. What it's not going to do is help manage your taxes. Maybe there's some tax loss harvesting, maybe not. We already talked about that. But what about the rest of your taxes? Are there other areas within your old tax situation that you could be tweaking where income's coming from, what deductions you're taking, what credits you're applying for that could actually make your tax situation more efficient?
Yeah, particularly when you're investing, you want to coordinate your accounts. If you wake up one day and you've been doing all this investing and then you realize that all of your 401k, you've been investing in large capital growth stocks, and over in your robo-advisor account, it's all large capital growth stock, your lack of diversification carries some risk. So coordinating with your accounts is not a part of what that does. Now, the other side of that is when you're in robo planning, you don't really get anybody addressing your estate planning needs, evaluating your personal insurances, whether it's life insurance or health insurance, navigating your employer benefits and which ones to choose and which ones to let go, or even planning distributions on your retirement income. Again, you have to take it for what it offers you, because there are other few things that you don't get with a robo-advisor that you do get with some live people.
And even though we mentioned that one of the benefits of the robo-advisor is it can maybe provide a little bit of the emotional guardrails, right? Because it kind of automates the investing for you, kind of get your hands off of it. Well, what it doesn't do though is it really doesn't provide additional emotional guardrails above and beyond that. Like what if, you're seeing your robo portfolio decline 10, 15, 20%, and you need someone to talk you off the ledge of just pulling all that money out. A robo-advisor is not going to have anyone to chat with. Well, maybe with AI nowadays, maybe there might be an AI model you can chat with, but how supportive are they really going to be to addressing your concerns and helping you navigate that emotional roller coaster in a time like that.
You're going to call up Monty, the money chat bot, and ask him, hey, Monty, what do I do here? The emotional support gets missing in some of that, and there's really no one to help you avoid those big mistakes. But it also, in the end of it, you have to be careful. It does limit your customization, and it's not really ideal for trying to concentrate a certain position that only you are going to understand and know. It's really better to understand that this is a very simple platform and it's not designed for complex financial matters.
Exactly. So if you're someone with RSUs, you're a business owner, or just have maybe a more wealthy family household complex situation, these are all things that some of the planning a robo provides might be missing.
People out there may not know what an RSU is.
Good point. An RSU is a restricted stock unit. So if some companies provide shares of that company's stock to their employees, and that could be a position. Now we've got some clients that we work with that they've got heavy positions in their own company's stock, and there's a lot of planning that needs to be done because there's tax implications to ultimately diversify from some of that stock while also not running up their tax bill each year. So that's something that if you have a robo-advisor, it may not be looking at those other positions that you have outside of that one account with the robo itself.
Kind of puts you in a spot where you don't really know. But let me tell you what, there are some areas where the robo-advisor is a great fit. And number one, early stage investors. You want to start small. Just want to get started and understand it. And you need low cost, you need simplicity. You just want to see it, you want to buy it, and you want to see what happens with it.
Right. Or people in a similar situation, even if you're not an early stage investor, just got a very straightforward financial situation. Maybe you're just a W-2 employee, which is one of the more simple tax situations. Maybe you're single, you don't have any kids, no dependents, nothing like that, and no major estate tax considerations either. These are all things that could also favor a robo-advisor. You're just looking to invest. You don't really got much financial planning going on, so you're not going to be missing maybe a whole lot of that. That could also be, another fit for a robo-advisor. And then your DIY investors, the people who maybe do have a little bit of knowledge on the planning side, want to do a lot of that themselves, although that can still be a little bit dangerous of, knowing just enough to get yourself in trouble, but not enough to, make all the proper planning decisions. But it provides that DIY option for those individuals that fit that mentality.
Yeah, and I also think too, when you start talking about DIY investors doing it yourself, I think part of that is that, my crypto wallet and I have a lot in common. We're both emotionally volatile, and you have to be really careful when you're doing that automation that you're on top of what that automation is, because if you decided to not invest in it because you just don't like that company anymore, you better make sure you go in and you stop making that investment. Don't get caught up in your emotions.
Right. And then finally, if you just got some money that's you're unsure of what to do with, it doesn't have a specific goal in mind. Maybe it's medium to long term, and you're kind of still waiting to figure out, well, what exactly do I want to use this money for? Is it retirement? Is it a home purchase, et cetera? But you just want to at least get it started investing. So it's not just sitting there in cash doing nothing. Well, in my opinion, robo-advisor would be a decent option there, because at least you're not just losing value to inflation. You're getting it invested until you can finally make that decision of, maybe you're shopping around an advisor at the moment and you're still making a decision, but you don't want to just still sit on the sidelines anymore with your money just sitting in cash. It could be a decent option for some of those funds.
So as we go forward into here, I want to put out a little cautionary tale on robo advisors. So how can you tell when you're at a party or a picnic and you're hanging out with people, how can you tell that somebody there is a crypto investor?
I don't know. Just like a...
It's because they will tell you about it.
Okay, yeah, no, I can see that.
I am at parties and everything, I get these people, but you don't ever hear from somebody as, oh, I just lost 40 grand with this robo advisor over here or this crypto advisor over here. You know, you don't hear those stories. All you hear is all the positive stuff.
Right.
So you have to be careful what you hear out there, what you see marketed on TikTok and a few other places where people are pushing, you know, take this robo advisor is going to be really good for you.
Right.
So you got to be really careful about it because people brag about their wins all the time, but you never really get to hear about their losses.
No, I agree. And so then, you know, if you're not in one of those scenarios we just talked about, there's also other scenarios where a robo advisor probably isn't a best fit. And instead, you may be better served working with an actual, you know, human advisor instead. And that's, you know, some of the things we've kind of already discussed. Got a more complicated life or you know, domestic situation. You're married, kids, maybe going through divorce even too. You have some inheritance. You're a business owner, or you've got multiple accounts. You want coordination across those accounts. You know, these are all scenarios where a human advisor is going to almost certainly provide higher value than just a robo advisor.
Yeah, and I think also as well, as you go through this, whether it's, you know, tax strategy, you know, Roth conversions, multi-year planning, your asset allocation, particularly as you get into closer to the retirement years, charitable giving, people that really feel strongly about wanting to provide things for people. Retirement income planning, you know, when do you take out money? Social Security timing, pension decisions if you have a pension, longevity planning. These are all not part of it. And lastly, behavioral coaching.
Yeah, like we already kind of talked about. You need that someone there to, you know, be the voice of reason to talk you off the silly decision, because honestly, that is and we've actually even read studies on it, that is where a lot of advisors actually add the bulk of their value. It's just preventing their clients from not making the best decision, but to help prevent them from making the costly decision.
Yeah, we just recently had a client that really wanted to make some money in, crypto, and ended up using and losing, I don't know, 40 grand, was it?
Approximately.
Approximately.
It was unfortunate. It was something that if they would have likely discussed, you know, with their advisor, with myself, it could have been something that we maybe could have avoided or found another way that was maybe more legitimate to invest in crypto. And, you know, those steps were missed. And so that's where, you know, having worked with a human advisor would have provided those guardrails, that level of safety, and having not, you know, provide some, you know, openness to risk and to loss. So on this slide that you'll see on the screen is just some examples of all those things we just discussed. Who are those scenarios? So we'll just run through these quickly, but who are those individuals, those scenarios where robos would be a good fit for and who they may not? So, you know, we can see in the top left, a young professional, maybe who should use a robo, you know, someone who wants low cost, automation, doesn't have a lot of complexity, you know, helps remove that barrier to entry because maybe they don't have a lot to invest. Also, you know, a family member with multiple goals who shouldn't use a robo. And they've got multiple accounts, multiple goals. They need to prioritize one or the other, navigate trade-offs of investing maybe to one account versus another. You know, how much do you forego? You know, one common example of that would be that I think help clients navigate all the time is, you know, how much should you be saving for retirement versus maybe your next home purchase? Do you forego saving, you know, 10, 15, 20% of your income for retirement just to save more for other goals? Or how do you balance, you know, those different accounts and those different goals?
Yeah, and I think even with that, our first young professional, where, you know, the biggest risk when you're a young professional and you're starting to invest, the real risk is not picking the exact right investment.
Right.
It's not investing at all. People wait until I have a lot of money, I don't want to invest. No, you start now. Same thing with a family. You got a young family, you got all these goals. Well, this is where a human advisor can add real value, because it's, again, not about picking the right investments. It's really orchestrating, which is a great word, the whole complexity of it and tying it all together.
Right. And then finally, the last two scenarios, business owner, someone who's got some complexity. They're going to need lots of planning, evaluating S corps, LLCs, tax coordination, payroll contributions, etc. And then finally, just the DIY investor, and maybe someone who already invests themselves. But I think with a lot of DIY investors, they sometimes run into the emotional side of things of maybe hanging on to a stock a little too long because they want to earn back their losses, or being too concentrated in one position over another. Robo can help alleviate some of those DIY pitfalls that those people can run into.
Yeah, if there's one thing that I've seen over the years, and it's so true, is that people, they have a stock that their grandfather gave them, pass it on to their dad, pass it on to them, and they just don't want to sell it because there's a sentimental value. Right. And I've watched people do that and watch it just fritter away over time as that company either went out of business and got bought out, or, there are some times when it works and that's great, but having an emotional reason why you're hanging on to something doesn't work.
Right. Or there's the reverse scenario of, maybe it's a stock that someone bought that they thought was going to do well. It did poorly. And now they're just hanging on for it because, it's going to come back. It's going to come back.
Or they're buying more.
Right.
Or they're buying more.
Right.
Like, it's at a low price. I'll just keep buying more.
And sometimes that can work out in your favor.
It could.
Other times it might not. So, Robo can help alleviate some of those mistakes.
Exactly.
But as we close today, I think the biggest takeaways that hopefully you all gathered from today's episode is robo-advisors, they're not good. They're not bad. We're not pushing people away from them or towards them. They're just tools for individuals that need those tools and need those services in the specific situations. So you want to, make sure you're using the right tool depending on your situation's complexity, your own personal behavior, and your goals, your needs, across your whole financial picture.
Yeah, and I would encourage every one of you that's watching today to evaluate your situation honestly, to determine what it is that you're trying to do. When you're just trying to chase after money, it very rarely works out.
Or chase after a low cost. I've seen some people that's, maybe they need a lot of these things, but they're so fixated on, the advisor is going to cost more. The robo-advisor costs less. Well, you may actually get more value out of that extra cost than what you're paying for by getting the planning and the extra services.
Right, exactly right. Well, we're so glad that you joined us today. And as always, we really want you to focus on all the good things that you can take out of this for your own learning experience. Hey, thank you for listening to us today. I'm Andrew Boudry.
And I'm Ryan Cummings.
Remember, live today for the tomorrow that's in your heart.
Because you'll never have more time to invest for tomorrow than you do today.
Thank you for listening.
Bread and butter.